So for more insight, it's a pleasure to welcome to studio political commentator Tom Cross. Tom, thank you so much. As always, a stunning result, a shock to many, dubbed as being too close to call initially. Many, of course, thinking Kamala Harris might make history for a range of reasons. What reaction are you seeing among pundits and the public to this US election result?
Well, yes, it wasn't just too close to call. On the day of the election, such austere papers as the Financial Times sent out a breaking news alert, say it's the tightest race in modern US history.
Right.
So it's not just that they got it wrong, they got it very wrong. Or rather, I should say that there were pollsters who got it right. Tend to be right-wing pollsters, and they have a track record of getting it right. And if the Democrats had learned something from the last elections, they might have paid attention to those pollsters too. And they might have figured out why, not for the first time, pollsters were underestimating the support for Trump. In fact, somebody wrote today that Trump has now received more votes than anyone else in US history. That's because he stood on 3 different elections. If you add the 3 elections together, it's even more than FDR got when FDR also had 3 elections. So I'm seeing some reactions which are quite frankly hysterical among supporters of the Democrats or other people who dislike or hate Donald Trump. And I say this with regret because, you know, I think all of us who believe in democracy, and I think most of us, like myself, are actually centrists. We want a good, stable, 2-party system. I don't think I'm the only person who said I wasn't that happy that Trump was the Republican candidate, and I wasn't that happy that Harris was the Democratic candidate. So I want the Democrats to learn for the future so they won't make this mistake in 4 years when, let's say, J.D. Vance might be elected president. And what I see is hysteria, both among Democrats and among the media who tend to support the Democrats. So I'll give you an example. I got some emails forwarded to me today from some synagogues, one in New York, one in New Jersey.
Right.
I mean, you would think a nuclear bomb had hit Israel or something. They are so over the top. They are so hysterical. They don't even allow for the fact that maybe not every congregant necessarily feels that way. Some might even, dare I say, have voted for Trump, or at least Republican, or not voted at all. They seem so out of touch. Likewise with the media. So I've been leaked today by 3 different staff members at The Guardian, which is Britain's leading liberal newspaper,
right,
an email sent out by the editor, Catherine Viner, which, you know, offers counselling to all their staff in London and in Australia and America, but it also uses phrases like, the results of this election could, and I quote, reverberate for 1 million years.
Wow.
Now, to be fair to her, she's tying it into the climate change policy, but even so, that whole email, she must have known it would be leaked. It was sent to hundreds of people. So my conclusion is, instead of doing some soul-searching, they just don't see themselves. They're living in a complete bubble. And if I might add, because I get the print edition of the New York Times, I'm a rare dinosaur in that respect, and you have headlines here saying, Trump is now fully ignoring the working class on the op-ed page, or, I can't pronounce this, Kamala phenomenon is real, etc., etc. There doesn't seem to be any self-awareness at all that not everyone is obsessed by, you know, race, gender, and so on. And in fact, if you insult the electorate by, you know, Barack Obama, for example, telling African-American males they must vote for Kamala Harris, a little bit like 8 years ago, Madeleine Albright said there's a special place in hell for women that don't vote Hillary. It would be like telling some American Jews, you must vote for Bernie Sanders because he's Jewish, or you must vote for Donald Trump because his son-in-law is Jewish. People can make up their own mind. Stop boxing people.
And you talk about this hysteria in terms of some of the reaction. Is it not something just as simple as the fact that Donald Trump managed to tap into what Americans really want right now, their bread and butter issues at this juncture?
No, I mean, the election victory shouldn't have been a surprise. Look, I visited America once in the Biden term. I was shocked by the inflation. I was shocked by simple groceries in the supermarket, or I don't know, in the pharmacy, Dwayne Reed or something. Couldn't believe it. It was much more expensive even than here in Tel Aviv or London. So it's very basic. People want to be able to afford groceries. They also, understandably, want a sensible immigration policy. You can't have millions and millions of people come across the border. So to build a border barrier, wall, whatever we want to call it, you know, I would think 90% of Americans would agree with it. Likely on social issues like trans issues. I mean, I'm sorry, but most people can spot the difference between someone who's a biological male and female. That doesn't mean that some people don't transition, but this obsession with the idea of anybody redefining themselves without some kind of operation or something. You know, what do people think?
Much more to debate, no doubt, on all these issues. You talk about lessons learnt, no doubt some soul-searching for the Democrats. What kind of lessons would you imagine could impact opposition parties, perhaps in Israel, the electorate in the UK?
Yeah, what I would say, there are parallels to make. Look, let's start with the UK, where I grew up. Keir Starmer won a strong majority for Labour this past July.
Sure.
The previous election, the Conservatives under Boris Johnson had won a big majority, and people said Labour wouldn't get in for at least 10 years, but they did. How? Keir Starmer went to the centre. He made moderate policies that would appeal to the centre, that would appeal to people who had voted for the right-wing parties to switch. He did a policy manifesto in some detail, whether it's transport, education, whatever. He had a shadow cabinet, so we had a kind of idea who would be the foreign minister and finance minister and so on. So what I would suggest, both for the Democrats next time round in America, but even more so here in Israel, is the Democrats largely ran on a negative campaign against Trump, rather than explaining clearly enough what Harris's policies would be. Other than the issue of abortion, I'm not quite clear they articulated any proper policy. What are they going to do about migration? What are the economic policies? What are they going to do about Israel, Gaza, Iran? And here in Israel, I find the problem is you have several opposition parties. If they were more mature, they would unite into one social democratic party under one leader. They would have primaries, and whoever turns out on top would be the leader of that party. Instead, they scream democracy against the Likud, much as the Democrats scream democracy against Trump. But the truth is, Trump won a hard-fought battle against Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley and others. He won the nomination fair and square, whereas Biden was kind of anointed even 4 years ago against Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And then this time too, and then they shoved him out and anointed Harris, which isn't very democratic. You can't scream democracy, democracy, and then not behave in a democratic way yourself.
Love him or hate him, no disputing an historic comeback for Donald Trump. Fascinating times ahead. Always appreciate your insights. Thank you so much. Political commentator Tom Cross, thank you so much for being here in studio.